The gift sat on my coffee table, a small box of dark, polished wood. It was the first thing Leo had given me since he'd reappeared in my life a week ago, materializing out of a 10-year fog like a ghost in a tailored suit. He found me at the library where I work, walking up to the circulation desk with the same crooked smile I'd spent my early 20s trying to forget. He was wealthier now, that was obvious. The smile, though, was identical. "For old time's sake," he'd said, placing the music box in my hands. My fingers traced the familiar carved bird on the lid. We'd found its twin in a dusty antique shop just outside of town, the summer we were 19. We couldn't afford it then. I lifted the lid. A soft, tinkling melody filled the quiet of my apartment, a tune so deeply buried in my memory it felt like unearthing a bone. Inside, pasted to the velvet lining, was a tiny, faded photograph of the two of us. 19, sun-drenched and stupidly happy. I smiled, a real, unguarded smile for the first time in days. Then my eyes focused. In the picture, a silver chain was looped around my neck. A delicate butterfly pendant rested at the hollow of my throat. I stared at it, my smile freezing on my face. I leaned closer, the music box's melody suddenly sounding thin and off-key. I never owned a necklace like that. I was sure of it. I hated butterflies, always thought they were like beautiful moths. It was a weird, specific dislike I'd had since I was a kid. Leo knew that. "You're misremembering," a voice in my head said. "It's a long time ago. It's just a gift." I shut the lid, the music cutting off abruptly. My hand was trembling slightly. I pushed the box to the far corner of the table and tried to ignore it. A few days later, I was trying to lose myself in my routine. I put on a jazz playlist I'd carefully curated over years, something calm to help me sketch. The smooth sound of a saxophone filled my small living room, a comforting blanket of noise. I was just getting into a rhythm when the music stopped. A blast of electric guitar and screeching vocals shattered the mood. It was a heavy rock song from the 90s, one I hadn't heard in a decade. Leo's favorite song, the one he used to play on repeat in his beat-up Ford, the one I always complained about. My charcoal pencil snapped in my hand. I scrambled for my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. The app showed the song playing from my cool jazz playlist. It didn't belong there. I'd never added it. I stabbed at the screen, skipping the track, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. "It's just a glitch," I told myself, my voice a harsh whisper in the now silent room. An ad or a weird suggestion from the algorithm. I checked my account activity. No strange logins, no notifications. Just that one song, sitting there in my history, like a stain. I shook my head, but the feeling of being watched, of something being wrong, clung to me like damp clothes. That night, I was on the phone with him. I was trying to sound normal, trying to pretend the last few days hadn't felt like my world was tilting on its axis. I found myself complaining about my upstairs neighbor, Mr. Henderson. A sweet old man, but he was getting forgetful, often leaving his TV on at full volume deep into the night. "It's just loud," I said, forcing a light laugh. "I feel bad complaining, but I can barely sleep." Leo's voice on the other end was smooth, sympathetic. "You shouldn't have to put up with that, Sarah. Let me handle it." "Oh no, you don't have to," I said quickly. "It's not a big deal, really. I just needed to vent." "I insist," he said, and there was a finality in his tone that silenced me. "You deserve peace." The next morning, a moving truck was parked in front of our building. I watched from my window as two men silently carried Mr. Henderson's worn armchair and stacks of boxes out to the curb. There was no fuss, no noise. It was efficient and eerily quiet. Mr. Henderson followed them out, his shoulders slumped. He didn't even look up at my window. That evening, Leo came over. He brought tea, his smile as warm as ever. He settled onto my couch as if he'd always been there. I heard Mr. Henderson decided to move to a quieter place out in the suburbs, he said, handing me a steaming mug. Guess the city life wasn't for him anymore. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather snaked its way up my spine. I looked at him over the rim of my mug. That was fast. Leo took a slow sip of his tea, his eyes never leaving mine. When a problem needs to be solved, it needs to be solved completely. He set his mug down with a soft click. Order is the most important thing, don't you think? His voice was calm, reasonable, but his eyes were cold, like polished stones. There was a certainty in them that scared the hell out of me. He left soon after, kissing my cheek at the door. I stood frozen in my living room long after he was gone. The silence from the apartment above was no longer a relief. It was heavy. It pressed down on me, a physical weight. He hadn't just helped. He had erased a problem. He had rearranged a piece of my world without my permission, as easily as moving a chess piece. What did he do? What did he say to that old man? My hands shook as I opened my laptop. I typed his full name into the search bar, Leo Vance. The results flooded the screen. Articles about his company's success, his generous donations to charities, photos of him at black tie events. A perfect, polished online footprint. There was nothing out of place, nothing to explain the power he seemed to wield. The absolute cleanness of it was more disturbing than any scandal would have been. Panic began to bubble in my chest. I needed an outside perspective. I needed someone to tell me I was crazy. I snatched my phone and dialed Jessica, my best friend since college. She would know what to say. She always did. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey you," she chirped. "Jess, thank God. I need to talk. It's about Leo." There was a pause on the other end, just a beat of silence, but it stretched on for an eternity. Then her voice came back, different. It was flat. All the usual warmth was gone. "Oh, Leo," she said, her tone perfectly even. "He's a wonderful man, Sarah. He knows exactly what's best for you." My blood ran cold. "Everything will fall into its proper place," she continued, the words coming out smooth and rehearsed. "You'll see." My throat closed up. "Everything will fall into its proper place." It wasn't a phrase Jessica used. It wasn't her. But I had heard it before, from Leo, just a few hours earlier, when he was talking about order. My hand flew to my mouth. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled backward, my eyes locked on the window, on the dark street outside. Down below, under the sickly orange glow of a streetlight, a figure stood in the shadows. It was Leo. He was looking right up at my apartment. He wasn't holding a phone. He was just standing there, watching. And as my horrified gaze met his, he lifted a hand, not in a wave, but just an acknowledgement. Then, slowly, he smiled. He knew. He had heard every word. Sleep didn't come. How could it? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him standing under that streetlight, smiling that calm, knowing smile. The night was a long, suffocating stretch of darkness, where every creak of the old building was his footsteps on the stairs, every whisper of the wind, his voice at my window. When the first gray light of dawn finally filtered through my blinds, I was already wide awake, my body thrumming with a terror so profound it felt like a sickness. I swung my legs out of bed, needing to move, to do something normal. Make coffee. That was normal. I walked into the living room, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor, and my brain just stopped. Everything was in its place. The stack of books on the end table, the half-finished sketch on my easel, the remote on the arm of the sofa. But the armchair, my favorite armchair, the one I'd spent a month's savings on 2 years ago, the one that was a deep, calming navy blue, was gray. Not a trick of the light from the rising sun, not a shadow. It was a flat, charcoal gray, as if it had always been that color. No, it was blue. I bought it because it was blue. My heart started to pound a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs. I walked toward it slowly, my hand outstretched. I needed to touch it, to see if it felt different. The fabric was the same familiar soft texture under my fingertips. I ran my hand over the armrest, half expecting my fingers to come away with gray dust, revealing the blue underneath. Nothing. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I opened the camera and pointed it at the chair. On the screen, the chair stared back at me. Gray. A wave of dizziness washed over me.